So, here we are. Monday, September 14th, 2015, Nick Diaz, fined by the Nevada Athletic Commission 33% of his UFC 183 purse of $500,000 and banned 5 years for having marijuana metabolites in his system. It was the third time in the course of his professional fighting career he has tested positive in that state for that very same infraction. And now he is facing what is, to put it best, career uncertainty, probably the end of his career. There's a lot to get to, a lot of moving parts. Here are three major takeaways from the Nick Diaz Nevada Athletic Commission fiasco. So, takeaway number one from this fiasco with Nick Diaz and the Nevada Athletic Commission is that the state athletic commission system, and in particular the Nevada Athletic Commission as it currently stands, are totally broken. Look, around the early part of the 20th century, athletic commissions had a really valuable role. They essentially brought government oversight to something that had none before. It made promoters get licensed. It made fighters get licensed. It made sure that promoters paid guys and when they were supposed to. It made sure that promoters, when they matched up two different fighters, were relatively equal in skill. There was some kind of competitiveness to it. And this administrative role that these commissions played was hugely valuable, and it still is to this day. That's actually what they do really well. And then when you watch these hearings on UFC Fight Pass or anywhere else, you can see that that's really sort of part of the seamless organization that these commissions have. They can bring in fighters, they can bring in promoters, they can bring in all different members of the fight community, and they can do these administrative tasks relatively easily. But short of that, everything else is going wrong. You can see this any number of different places. Where do we even begin? First of all, the UFC itself, I won't say they're distancing themselves from the Athletic Commission because they technically can't, but they certainly have recognized that it's not enough. Why else would they bring in USADA to have even yet another layer of oversight to, in their minds at least, combat what they see as a problem with performance-enhancing drug use in mixed martial arts or their organization? They realize that commission testing, as it currently stands, is totally inadequate for anyone who actually wants to move the needle in that direction. You can have the debate about whether or not that's the best way to go, but if they're going to go that way, commission testing on its own cannot get it done. These are bureaucrats. They are not scientists. They are not toxicologists. They are not people really capable of making these kinds of decisions or really having this kind of effective oversight. And that's why the UFC has said we need to get people who are better at that, who are specialists at that, and they have gone and done that. But there's something way more sinister going on here, right? Who is the Athletic Commission beholden to? Their own regulations, the state of Nevada. That's really kind of about it. They can do, short of that, whatever else they want. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a very, very wide latitude. They expect fighters, be it Nick Diaz or anyone else, to go in there and genuflect before them, which is not written into any kind of regulatory code. It's just what they've come to expect because there really kind of is no oversight. People talk about Nick Diaz taking this to court. Good luck, because he's going to need it. A lot of these different organs of government in any kind of state very much defer to one another. They don't want to rock the boat, even if they don't agree necessarily with what one organ of the government is doing. So there's already that problem. And you saw during the course of the hearing when the Nevada Deputy Attorney General would object, there would be a lot of paused silence and people on the commission really sort of being engaged in what he was saying. Literally, when Diaz's attorneys were objecting, there were chortles from members of the Nevada Athletic Commission as if this is some sort of childish game. They did whatever they want when they wanted. And with the rules, 5 years is not written anywhere into the regulations. They just did that. And you ask yourself why. Is that to have an extreme deterrent effect? Certainly marijuana is so ubiquitous and only growing, that won't really have any kind of effect. But more than that, it seemed like because Nick Diaz had the temerity to want to launch a defense and had aggressive counsel, that the commission was offended at the very idea. Pat Lundvall, in a moment, in my opinion, that can only be described as absolute and total lunacy, suggested that Nick Diaz be banned for life. On what possible rational grounds could anyone with a mammalian brain ever think that is something justifiable, much less ethical? It is total and complete, absolute lunacy. Lunacy backed by the fact that they know they have such wide latitude to do whatever they want. They're going to do that within the strictures of their very open parameters. And with the commission system generally, It varies state to state. Look, Nevada admittedly has a heavy burden to deal with. They have more combat sports in their state than anyone else. New Jersey actually runs a pretty good commission from what we can tell, but they don't have quite the same, for lack of a better description, payload that comes in that they have to deal with. It would be better with uniform standards from Georgia to Tennessee to Virginia to Jersey to New York and all the way back to Nevada and California and Oregon and everywhere else, if a national governing body could make things uniform and deploy different assets to different parts of the country as needed. Certainly hot spots like Nevada would have to have their own indigenous, for lack of a better description, commission to oversee things day to day, week to week, or month to month. But you get the point. The point is, there is so much open spacing, so much inconsistency, that the way in which fighters are regulated from Nevada and everywhere else, it's either too hot, too cold, sometimes in the middle, but never really all that fair. And especially in the case of Nevada, where if a commission wants to be heavy-handed, even without any good reason, they can be. All of that brings us to the second major takeaway from the Nick Diaz Nevada Athletic Commission fiasco. Namely, that anyone who argues that, well, Nick Diaz broke the rules and that's what this is about, needs to desperately have their head examined. There is so much wrong with this argument. Number one, first of all, rules do not have justification by virtue of their own existence. If that were the case, then you could make any rule that could undermine any portion of the population or have any kind of hugely negative outcome, and all you could simply say reflexively is, well, because this rule exists, we therefore have to obey it. No, sir, no, ma'am, not today, not ever. You are not obligated to obey any rule that you feel deeply is unjustifiable. And that's a complicated debate, which we can have for another time, but the course of human history is actually kind of driven by that fact. Look, rules, especially in smaller subsets of our life, particularly mixed martial arts regulation at the state level, they need to make sense. They have to comport with modernity. They have to comport with the rest of state laws. They have to make things better. They have to create and encourage outcomes that make rational sense. How is it rational, based on his infractions, such as they are, that banning him for 5 years in any way penalizes him appropriately or has a deterrent effect? This has nothing to do with it. Arguing and saying, well, it's a rule and he broke it, so what? You should break dumb rules and all kinds of rules that don't make sense. That's exactly what he did. And this brings me to the second part of the argument. Nick Diaz has tested positive 3 times for marijuana metabolites in Nevada. That is true. But all 3 times were under a urinalysis. And I have beaten this drum before, but I will continue to do so. A urinalysis only tells you that someone used. It does not tell you the window in which they used. And all those things in terms of what kind of marijuana they took, how it was administered, their body fat composition, their course of normal use, is it chronic, is it not? All these kinds of things affect how these test results look. And a urinalysis, while they have improved them over time, this is still 1970s era technology. That's what we're using to take away a fighter's career here. That is totally and completely unconscionable. A much better method is a blood test, which, by the way, Nevada cops, when they pull you over, have the right to use to see if you have committed a DUI. But you might say, Luke, blood tests have their own problems. They are not foolproof. They are not without their own limitations. And that is true. So what does that tell you? What that tells you is the science behind marijuana detection in the bodies of athletes is bad. It is dubious. It is not very good. We don't actually have very good methods via blood, and especially not with urine, to determine in or out of competition windows which are relevant to marijuana in the state of Nevada. And so if you have kind of shaky science at best, wouldn't it be the prudent move to say, geez, maybe we don't want to be overly punitive. We can't let it take place. We have to have some kind of testing. We can't just say everyone can use marijuana whenever they want. We certainly don't want people taking marijuana as they enter the cage. Okay, fine. But if your science is shaky, you have every obligation to be a little bit more on the lenient side, not the crazy, lunatic, totally unjustifiable, unethical side. Your science doesn't back your punishments. Your anger backs your punishments. This, to me, is the whole crux of the issue. Saying he broke a rule 3 times. Yes, a rule which has very, very shaky scientific foundations. They can't actually look you in the eye and say he broke the rule. All they can do is give you a good, educated guess sometimes. That's it. They can't actually say, in competition, we know for a fact Nick Diaz used marijuana. They can't say it. And if you can't say it, why are you taking away his career and hundreds of thousands of dollars? And the final lesson here, rule number 3, we live in an era where fighters in this sport, in mixed martial arts, they have no protections. They have no ally. They have no recourse. They have nothing. I mean, you look at all the different ways in which fighters have the bad end of the deal virtually every which way they go. Here before the Athletic Commission, they have no choice but to get on bended knee, guilty or not. Because if you fight back, even with facts and even with an excellent defense like Nick Diaz has, all you're going to do is make them look bad. And if you make them look bad and they get angry, they're going to literally suggest you be banned for life over a infraction they can't even prove took place. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the state of fighter welfare in front of the Nevada Athletic Commission today. They have no recourse there. None. So that's the first problem. All you can do is beg for clemency. All you can do is compliment them. All you can do is honor their procedures and say, I am so sorry. I am so guilty. Please have mercy on me. More gruel, dear sir. Think about fighters when they go to sponsors. Yes, most sponsors are by the book and have actually been a very good thing for fighters. But we've all heard the horror stories too. Guy signs up, wears all the gear, promotes them everywhere in every interview, does what they can, and never gets paid. And what recourse do they really have? Twitter? Shame outing? How good is that? Or how about with promoters? Any promoter, all promoters. The fighters don't have a union in which to collectively bargain. All they can do is hope that they're really popular and use their own individual leverage to get what they want. And yeah, that's been good for a few. And certainly it's better to have promoters in the sport who are promoting fights than it is not. No one can say otherwise. And we do have a lot of good promoters. We have a lot of guys who do business by the book. And it's good that we have the Bellators and the World Series of Fightings and the UFCs and the King of the Cages and everybody else. But the fact of the matter is, oftentimes when it comes to negotiations, the fighters are only left with the very minimal they can get because they have no universal leverage. And maybe that's part of their own problem. We've talked about that before. They should be getting together and they should be having these discussions as a collective unit. They need to be certified as employees, or recertified anyway as employees, and they need to become a union. And that's their own fault. No one can do that for them. Okay, maybe so. But when you look at from regulatory to sponsors to collective bargaining with promoters, we live in an era where fighters are getting better, and they are, in terms of their technical skill, they are college graduates, they are mothers, they are fathers, they are sons, they are daughters. And every which way they turn, they work at a power disadvantage everywhere in mixed martial arts. It makes you wonder why a fighter would ever want to be just that, a fighter. And then they go and lose so they can be harassed or mocked online by jackals in the digital space. It's a tough time to be a fighter. But most importantly, and I guess most notably, it is a very tough time to be Nick Diaz, which, or I should say who, I suspect we will not see ever fight again, short of a miracle in court or some other unforeseen circumstance. You have very likely seen the last of Nick Diaz, and I can't imagine that if Nick Diaz is gone, Nate Diaz is too far behind.